economist and the president of the Budget Lab at Yale University. Natasha Sarin is joining us right now. She was also a counselor to President Biden's Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen. Natasha, thanks so much for joining us. I'm anxious to get your thoughts on the July jobs numbers that were just released this morning. Economists expected a much higher number. What's your reaction?
Well, my reaction is that what we are seeing in the economy is that the tariffs are really starting to bite. Because what happened this month is the labor market has proven to be weaker than we anticipated, both for this month here in July, but also these really substantial downward revisions for May and June, which indicate to us exactly what the models that my colleagues and I at the Budget Lab have been producing, which is when you have tariffs at these incredibly high levels, the effective tariff rate in the economy now, post all these new deals that we saw over the course of the last few days, is at about 18%. That's about 7 times what it was when President Trump took office. And that is going to lead to a smaller economy. It is going to lead to 500,000 fewer jobs in the economy. And frankly, that's what we're starting to see.
And as you mentioned, Natasha, numbers for May and June, jobs numbers, were revised down dramatically by more than 250,000 jobs. May saw just 19,000 new jobs added. June had only 14,000. These are huge decreases from where they were previously reported. What does this tell you about the numbers?
Well, what's really interesting, Wolf, is that I think it kind of comports with what you might expect in a world in which there's just so much uncertainty around where these trade deals and where policy is ultimately going to land. Because if you're a business in this country and you're trying to think about making decisions about new workers to bring on or where it makes sense to invest or where it makes sense to build, you're frankly in wait and see mode because you don't at all know the environment in which you're going to be operating in. You don't know how much it's going to cost to import parts to build those cars. You don't know the environment in which you're going to be able to bring in different types of products that you need to be able to sell if you're a retailer. And so I think what the economy is reflecting is that that type of uncertainty really has quite seismic consequences. And we're starting to see it show up in the labor market. Also this week, though, you're starting to see it show up in inflation. You're seeing durable goods inflation. That's particularly the sectors where the tariffs are having the most bite. It's things like furniture, consumer electronics. Inflation in the last 6 months has been grown at the highest rate that it's grown at any time in the last 4 decades, absent the pandemic. So this is an economy that sort of on both dimensions with respect to inflation and with respect to the labor market is showing signs of real challenge.
The president has been claiming almost every single day that the U.S. is the, quote, hottest country in the world when it comes to the economy. Listen to what he's been saying. I want to just play this clip.
We have the hottest country in the world now. We're taking in hundreds of billions of dollars. We have the highest stock market we've ever had. We have the best numbers we've ever had.
So, Natasha, what's your reaction to that? What do the numbers actually show?
Well, the thing is, when President Trump took office, we actually had a very, very strong economy. The labor market was very strong, and you had inflation. It hadn't gotten all the way back to the Federal Reserve's 2% inflation target, but it was well on its way. The sort of challenge that the economy is facing right now isn't that we've had a financial crisis or that there's been some sort of seismic event like COVID. What's happening right now is we have this man-made crisis that's come as a result of these trade wars where it's impossible for businesses to make any real decisions about how to think about investment, and also where consumers, because essentially tariffs are a tax on literally everything the American consumer is buying. When you tax those goods, you make them more expensive, and that impacts the pocketbooks of the American people to buy those goods, but also changes their choices about other goods that they're going to be able to buy if the prices of things they need for things like back to school shopping or buying a new car have increased so dramatically.
As you know, Natasha, President Trump announced new steep rates for more than 6 countries, tariffs. How is this going to impact American consumers?
So our estimates at the Budget Lab suggest that the result of these tariffs is that the average American household is going to face price increases of around $2,400 per family. They're going to be concentrated in things like apparel, where you're going to see price increases on the order of magnitude of 35%, or consumer electronics like computers, where you're going to see price increases of around 20%. Importantly, these are effective tariff rates as of today. We know there is a ways to go with respect to landing the trade plane, in that we're not entirely sure where rates are going to land with respect to China or Mexico or Canada, where there sort of has been push to move the deadline and kick the can down the road with respect to some of these negotiations. And so I think both of these elements are complicated. We're in an incredibly high tariff environment that has real drag on the economy, but we're also in this moment of just tremendous uncertainty.
Natasha Sarin, the economist from Yale Law School. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.